Welcome, everybody, to BG Bio's Meet the Mods, where we learn a little bit more about our server leadership and who they are as people. I'm Caleb, or Duban, as I'm known in the Discord server. This week, I'm excited to bring to you the conclusion of our Meet the Mods series by having a chat with one of our founders. I realize we've brought some new mid bosses on recently that we've yet to talk with, so we'll be spotlighting them in a forthcoming mid boss mayhem series. But I'm determined to bring you a great conclusion to the now more archaically titled Meet the Mods. So we're going to go for that tonight. Without any further ado, that was a lot of prattling from me compared to the average. Let's hop into our show tonight. So let's start with the basics. What is your name and what are your pronouns?
So I'm Mevin on Discord, or Matt in the more real life aspects, I guess. And he, him are my pronouns.
Perfect. And what are you going to be playing for us this evening?
So I'm going to be doing a chill build of a monstrosity of a raft in Raft. So should be a blast.
All right. Yet again, I get to watch a game. I'm familiar with Raft, but I've never played it. So I look forward to seeing it happen. Looks like we're starting out at night here, if my eyes deceive me. So
yeah, I've been sitting in this lobby while we got ready for the stream, and it's turned to night. So
fair enough. Totally reasonable. All right. As is our grand tradition, we'll start things off with some rapid fire questions. Answer these as quickly as possible. I'll give you a couple breaks in between our sets tonight. Take a deep breath, and are you ready?
Okay, yep.
All right. What's the best winter beverage?
Hot cocoa.
Would you rather have a microwave or a toaster oven?
Microwave.
What's the correct way to eat an Oreo?
With milk.
Which goes in first, the milk or the cereal?
Definitely the cereal.
Agree. What's the best dessert of all time?
Ooh, that's a good one. Probably cheesecake, I guess.
Okay, good choice. What's the worst salad topping?
Tomatoes.
Okay. All right, that's the end of our first set. So we pause here for a moment to give you some chance to breathe.
Everyone can attack me with the tomato hate.
Do we have a pro tomato contingent in the chat? It hasn't cropped up yet if it's there.
Okay.
Only pro cheesecake people. So you're in good with everyone so far.
Yes, pro cheesecake.
All right, take a deep breath and we will start with the next set. Who's your favorite comedian?
It's a really good question. I used to really be into like Carlin back in the day, I guess, when he was still relevant, but yeah, you know.
What's the worst pickup line you've ever heard?
The one where it's like, are you an angel because you like fell from heaven? I don't remember exactly, but along those lines.
Good choice. Do you need noise or silence when you sleep?
So I usually do silence, but I've grown to also the sound of like a fan, especially when because I have a dog, Zoe. So sometimes she'll hear dogs barking outside and she'll go crazy in the morning. So instead I'm just like, okay, I'll put a fan noise on, and then she doesn't hear the dogs, so then I can sleep better.
That makes sense. What's the weirdest movie you've ever seen?
Probably parts of The Human Centipede, which I didn't see, honestly.
Oh God, I'm horrified. You've broken my ability to rapid fire this just thinking of that. No, reasonable. What's the all-time best karaoke song?
Oh, it has to be Love Shack by the B-52s. My partner should be in the chat here. It's a classic at BG karaoke events.
Perfect. What's the best color for a car?
I'm gonna say red. I'm a huge fan of red.
Interesting.
So yeah.
That's the end of that set. Red does get you higher insurance premiums, I think. So it's a risky choice, but
it does.
If you can afford it.
I have a red feature wall in my living room, so if that tells you anything, I kind of like red. So yeah, I'll go with
It's a good color.
it.
Somehow it got associated with people who drive too fast, I guess. But
Yeah.
otherwise, a good color.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. We will head into our last set of rapid fire here then. So
Okay.
take another deep breath. What's the best
Okay.
Discord react?
Mm, I really like the like rainbow like moving blob that I have. That's probably my favorite.
That's good. Support, tank, or DPS?
I am usually a healer in MMOs and type games, so probably support fits me best.
Okay. Which is better for gaming, PC or console?
Definitely PC.
Great choice. What's the best piece of flatware?
I'm gonna say a fork because it's the most useful in my opinion.
Which is better, an umbrella or raincoat?
I'm gonna say raincoat.
Okay. And what's the best Pokemon?
Oh, this is cliche, but my favorite is Dragonite.
Okay.
Everyone either loves Dragonite or has strong feelings that like liking Dragonite is a cop out. So yeah.
we'll see if they flame us. I just gotta wait a few seconds for the hate to roll in. No, totally reasonable. I think if someone asked me what my favorite Pokemon was, I wouldn't know what to answer. So I'm glad that question did not crop up on me. All right, fair enough. So that's the end of our rapid fire. So let's talk a little bit more seriously. Now we can talk a little bit about your background. So I always like joke that the beginning of the story is the best place to start, though no filmmaker ever seems to agree with me. So where were you born and where did you grow up?
Okay, so I was born here in Massachusetts. I've been here basically my whole life. I was just born outside of Boston. So I was born in kind of like a small town, I guess, for Massachusetts standards in the most cases. It's called Mendon. It's about 20 minutes south of Worcester, which is the second biggest city in Massachusetts. It's really not very well known. It's known for this, car dealership commercial where it's like the little town of Mendon because this like millionaire moved in and bought like half the town and started to make this auto mile. So that's like all people know us for. And we also have a drive-in and a zoo randomly in this small 6,000 person town. So it's kind of like we had things to do, but it wasn't very urban at all. Very very white, preppy, and just typical suburbia.
Fair enough. Who all was in your household growing up?
So my household was my brother and then my mom and my dad, basically. And yeah, just basic nuclear family, I would say. I don't know.
Sure. How would you describe your family? Are you like any of them in particular? Do you take after someone?
Uh, I would say I'm kind of like a combination of a few people.
Sure.
So the thing is, my brother and I are alike in that we like more like the tech. We're more tech oriented people. Like we're the younger people in the family. We fix everyone's tech. He's into games more than like my parents were. But like I think I'm more. I have like my mom's sense of like I don't know, kind of wanting to know how things work and stuff like that. So I'm a little bit different and a little bit of the same, but overall, like I'm like a first generation in terms of like actually having graduated from college with a bachelor's. So there's like some amount of difference between me and like my family and stuff. So
Sure. Um, where did you go to elementary, middle, high school? All in the same small town? Was there any moving around or?
yep, all in the same small town, Mendon, which actually, ironically enough, is so small that they literally, like, at one point decided that they didn't need their own school system and they combined with the town next to us. So it's called the Mendon Upton School District, which is kind of like a good school, I guess, because it's a pretty like privileged white suburban area. So like there's a lot of people that live in that area that live like that work sort of in Boston or in other places and then kind of treat it as a bedroom community. So it was a good school, but it wasn't like we got like very cultured, I would say. We weren't exposed to much. It was very just like controlled and yeah.
Gotcha. About how many people graduate from like the high school that you went to? Is
Probably
it
like
like very small or
200 maybe
okay?
something like that. So like between the two towns, there was kind of enough people to like have a legitimate graduation ceremony. But if it was only one of the towns, it probably wouldn't have been. So
Sure, that makes sense. Um, what were you like in those earlier stages of like? Did you like school? Did you hate it? You know, what was it like?
mm. So I would say I've always like done well in school, and I guess by extension liked it in some sense. I think it just like came easy for me, as like privileged as that is to say. But at the same time, like I don't know, I liked being out of school a lot because I liked playing games and all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't like I was like, oh, I love being in here and studying, but it was just it was a thing that I did and was good at, I guess. I don't know.
Sure, fair enough. Were you involved in any extracurriculars? How did you spend your time outside of school?
So I was involved with a couple extracurriculars. So I did band for one. That was in middle school. And then um I was a Boy Scout, basically, was the rest of my time. And then other than that, I was probably out on the weekends playing like card games and stuff at different card game stores. Like I was big into like Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! And all those things back in the day. I guess
Gotcha.
the other part I forgot to talk about is like, so I went to middle school in basically that small town school, but I ended up switching to a tech school when I went to high school, which was in the same area. So it was basically like directly across the street from the high school I would have went to. But I kind of made the decision that like based on the fact that my brother had gone there and liked doing it, that I also kind of wanted to follow his lead and go to tech school. So I ended up studying electronics in high school. So yeah.
Gotcha. Fair enough. Um, so tell me about your experience with the Boy Scouts. Did you go all the way through? Did you become an Eagle Scout? Did you stop at some point? What was your deal there?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I look back and I ask myself why I did a lot of the things that I did when I was younger. But like my brother made it all the way through Boy Scouts, so I kind of feel like there probably was some like expectation on myself that I was putting on myself. I don't know if my family was really putting it on me, but like I was like, I'm gonna make it all the way because my brother Greg did. So I basically did the same thing. But now that I look back, like I like a lot of the things that we did, but a lot of things that like Boy Scout stands for and stuff, I don't really agree with anymore. But like, obviously, it's hard to, you know, separate those things, I guess. But yeah.
Sure. I also think, I mean, like, at the time that you actually do that stuff, you're younger, right? And not
Hmm.
all of that is like as clear to a younger
Hmm.
person just in general as it is like once you're an adult looking back.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so totally reasonable. Um, what came after high school for you? What did you do next?
So I went to college. I went to the University of Massachusetts at Dartmouth, basically, which was sort of like not really my first choice, I guess, but then like my parents convinced me like state school is going to be better, like we'll be able to pay for more of it, you'll have less loans and all of that jazz. And like now that I'm older, I'm like thank you so much. But like back then I was just like I don't want this, I want to go to like one of these fancier named places and I'm going to do so much better. And now looking back, I'm like it was a really good decision because I used like whatever state standardized test scholarship I got, and it ended up being very reasonable and like all that stuff. And like now that I'm in my career, I'm working with people who went to Harvard or MIT and stuff, and like I don't know, I do just as well as them. So I don't know. Any advice for anyone out there deciding on their colleges? Like consider the state schools too. They could be really good as well.
Sure. No, that's cool. What was college like for you? Did you have a good time? Was it like, do you consider it an important part of your, lots of people consider college to be an important part of their development. Lots of people don't. What was it like for you?
I would say I liked it a lot in the terms of like I got exposed to a lot more people and a lot of different things and ideas that I had not gotten exposed to back in my small town. Basically, I would say is probably the biggest thing. So like when I got there, I was still kind of very stuck in the whole like um like raised Catholic. I wasn't like I wasn't saying like my family is like super religious, like maybe like AMD was mentioning, or we didn't have TV or something like that. I wasn't like that, but it was very much like we went to after school CCD classes and we like, went to church and things like that. And like I had some preconceived ideas about like kind of being gay and like on social issues and things like that, and just a lot of things like that, and like just being exposed to a bunch of people who were kind of not necessarily raised the same way that I was or in my small town really gave me a lot of opportunity to like grow as a person and to understand like my life on like a deeper level, because I think for a while thinking through that lens, you have a lot of guilt being like a queer person, and you're trying to like work through how the fact that I've been raised this way and I am religious and like all this stuff and like how that piece fits in. So I guess like whenever
Sure.
we talk about that piece after like my coming out, like there's a lot there that I feel like college really helped me kind of, get to that point where I was exposed to ideas where it was okay to think of myself that way and stuff like that. So I think in that way it was really important. But another part that I guess is sort of different than some other people experience college, like I still like took a lot of my social introversion into college, and like I really didn't like reach out and make as many friends or like expose myself to like a lot of social like parties and things like that. I was very much like I was a hermit, and I was playing World of Warcraft in my dorm room with my roommate who also came from the high school that I came from. So like there was an element of it where I was still like keeping myself in this bubble, but at the same time, at least like intellectually, I was being exposed to a lot of other people. But I definitely can't say I had the traditional college experience where I like jumped in, started a new life, like new me. I'm gonna party. I'm gonna like explore everything. It was still very controlled for me. I was still just like a nerd, no life WoW player at the very beginning. So yeah.
Fair enough. That's totally reasonable. Also, maybe not a foreign experience to many people who are sort of like tech people, right? Which
Yeah.
lends itself well to the question, what did you study in school? I don't know that I actually asked that yet.
Yeah, so I had this whole thought process where I went to tech school and that I'm gonna use that in college and I'm not gonna like waste it. So I was like, okay, I took electronics in, you know, high school, so I'm gonna go into something related to electronics now. And so I started off being in what's called engineering, which tries to mix like the low level electronics with like more of high level computer science stuff. And then I started to do that and I'm like, okay, great, this is great, until about I don't know, like the end of freshman year when we started to hit like some of like we were just talking about this before actually, like assembly language, like the really low level programming. And I was like, no, I don't like this at all. Like literally like sad to say, but in engineering programs there is so much cheating, I'm going to be honest. And like during that class everyone was just passing around the same lab to everyone, and I'm ashamed to admit, but I partaked in that because I hated that class so much. So after that I was like, I'm out of here and I want to do higher level programs. So I ended up in computer science, which is what I actually graduated with. So that was sort of my story of finding where I should be. But yeah.
Fair enough. I mean, we can run this like a confession and get some absolution in here.
Yeah, you got to get some tea somewhere in here, right?
Fair enough. So what's been going on since college? What are you doing as far as for work now?
Okay, so basically, I ended up, graduating from computer science, and as privileged as computer science graduates are, I ended up with a job right out of school because we're in hot demand. So I ended up I'm doing basically um, I guess what you would call like speech understanding, speech recognition type things for like academic and government clients. So basically trying to understand what's happening in the world in different languages for, people who speak English. So like what kind of propaganda is Russia sending out? And how can we know how to actually respond to that if we can't understand Russian? That type of thing. And like on a large scale that like there's no way we could hire enough people that can speak Russian to actually translate all of the stuff that's going on, that kind of stuff. And so a lot of like
Gotcha.
universities use this information to like have these like media bias courses and things like that. So
Sure. Cool.
yeah, yeah.
What do you think's next for your career? What's the dream job? Is it what you're doing right now, or is there a plan off in the horizon for you?
So that's a good question. Like I've actually like been at my job now like ever since I graduated. I haven't been necessarily one of those people that's really like jumped ship very much. So like I have a bit of like I don't know like weirdly perceived loyalty that I know my company doesn't have for me, but I have for them because I've been enjoying like my work and my coworkers and stuff like that. So I've actually been there like 8 years. But like basically at this point, like I don't know, I kind of want to get out there and expand more into seeing like what management looks like and things like that. And I'm not seeing that I necessarily have that path at my work now. So I kind of like to become like a tech lead or something, or a development lead at some point, and be able to
Gotcha.
kind of, see the other side of the thing where it's like I assign people jobs and work on the higher level rather than, doing the actual programming necessarily.
Sure. Fair enough. Um, so I do want to take a quick interlude to just say that Chris says you need some lanterns on the boat.
Okay, I'll get to that in a second. Yeah.
And Oni and Dizzo were both kind enough to appreciate the tea, so they're requesting more of that. So I'll try to drag some more out for y'all.
Okay.
All right. Also, while we're on an interlude, this brings me to the perfect opportunity to do this. I'm certain viewers want to know, so I have to ask. Can you tell us literally everything there is to know about Zoe?
Okay. So Zoe is 6 years old now. She is a Morkie, which is a Maltese Yorkie mix, and she is very photogenic and cute, and but also annoying at times. But yeah, very cuddly, and yeah, I share lots of pictures of her in the Discord, I'm sure. And she used to be, back when we first started the Discord, she was considered the official mascot for a little while. Like she'd be in like the profile images of like our social media and stuff like that. So
Gotcha. Good to know. So let's dig in and talk a little bit about your identity.
okay.
What are the most important pieces of your identity to you? How do you think you might describe yourself to someone?
So the funny thing is, I knew this question was coming, and I still don't have like maybe an answer that I'm happy with yet. It is really a hard question. Um, but I think relating to how like ever since this like I've helped form this group, I feel like my identity has changed so much. Like up until maybe 3 years ago, I was very much that person, like I was explaining in college. Like I was like a hardcore gamer. Like every weekend you'd see me like at home playing games pretty much, unless I was like out on a date or whatever. But so like and like kind of being LGBT or being gay wasn't as big of a part of my identity, because I don't feel like I was relating to the gay community at large, or the LGBT community at large, because I was like had some preconceived notions about what it was, and I was like, oh, I'm not into like going clubbing or going to parties or this or that. So like it wasn't a big part. But ever since like I've started the group, I've realized that like, as we form our own amazing community, that like there are, LGBT people of like every like type of person in terms socially, and like interests and hobbies and stuff like that. So I think for me now, like that's a much more important part of my identity, because I feel like being part of BG and leading BG has sort of helped me like help the community in a way. So I feel like I want to champion that more than I used to, feel. And then I guess like relating to all of that, I guess being a leader is sort of an interesting part of my identity and how I see the world now. Like I've always been kind of like what adults would say I was like mature for my age or something. So like in Boy Scouts, I was the youngest patrol leader ever in our troop or something like that. It's just been part of sort of who I am, even though I never think I'm a good leader. So it's weird that it all is like I was like bubble up to being a leader in some sense. So it's like it seems to be like my fate or whatever, but like or I'm naturally good at it. But yeah. So I
Sure.
would say maybe just being an LGBT leader is kind of how I might describe myself now in my present
Sure.
state.
That makes sense. So on the from the LGBTQ angle, was there a formal coming out for you? What did that look like?
Yeah, so for me, I would say like, well, I'm not going to say like I waited longer than other people because obviously like it's whatever time you're ready to come out. But I took like with that religious angle like I was talking about where I was like growing up and everything, like it was kind of hard for me to accept, I guess. Like I didn't even really think of myself as gay for like a long time. Like I didn't really accept it. And it really took probably until like maybe I was like just getting into college to realize like yeah I should probably like face this fact about myself at some point and work through like what this means because I clearly like I'm not attracted to like the opposite sex. It was just not happening. Like I never felt myself being like oh I want to be with someone from I felt myself more attracted to guys. So over time that was sort of like discovering myself. So I was probably about like when I formally came out to my parents and like friends, even though some of them probably already knew, I was probably like 21 or something. Like I was just like almost out of college. So even like
Sure.
in college, I wasn't. I was saying I didn't like jump into college and be like I'm gonna reinvent myself and I'm gonna be super out. I was still like a internalized like homophobia, ashamed of like what was happening and like not accepting it. So like even for 2 years in college where I felt more accepted than I ever did, I still didn't come out. And I kind of wish like I did now, but obviously you can't change that. Um,
Sure.
but then so around 21 or 22, like at one point I just like had enough and I was kind of like, okay, I'm gonna come out to my mom and stuff like that. And yeah, it didn't go particularly well. It didn't go particularly bad. I didn't get like kicked out. Like there's a lot of things, terrible things that can happen when you come out to your parents, especially when they're religious or something like that.
Sure.
But I got a lot of the typical like of the age group of my parents like giving back the propaganda that they had heard like you're gonna get like AIDS like all of that kind of stuff or like were you harmed as a child like all that stuff and that like, you don't I think like parents don't necessarily think how hurtful that is when you hear that but obviously when you do hear that when you've been like going through it yourself being a religious kid and like trying to understand like where this all fits in to hear those type of things that like people spread or propaganda it really hurt me at the time and like I can say now that my parents have come like completely 360 and are very supportive so that's obviously like the like good part of the story but at the beginning it wasn't like that and I think that's a common experience of a lot of people as well but yeah. And then to my friends, I think my friends already knew, but I didn't really say anything because there were subtle hints of like people saying like, "Oh, that's so gay," and then somebody like, "We shouldn't say that," and I'm just like, like keying in on those things, like they must know, but like I still didn't have like the like gusto to actually come out to them for a while, but like the friends that I made in college and stuff were very accepting when I did come out even though they were kind of like straight gamer bro people. So it ended up
Gotcha.
being okay.
Fair enough. Well, I'm glad that everyone that had trouble with it at first came around. Um, that is often the best that one can hope for, I think. Um, what has your experience in life been with community in general? Do you feel like you've had experiences where you've been excluded from community or where you've had trouble finding it, or has it always come easily to you?
I feel like I've always been able to find like kind of like nerdy gamer communities, like definitely in school, like that we had this nerd table where we were talking about playing RuneScape like 20, like every moment we were at lunch or something, and like we'd play it after school, and like there was always that piece. And Boy Scouts ended up being like a good place to find like, you know, friends and stuff like that. But I did like in college, like when I started to try to accept myself, like I got out and I wanted to like, you know, go to like the Pride Alliance at school and stuff like that. And like when I did that, I felt very like excluded from everything because everyone there was very like, you know, like extroverted, and it felt like everyone had their own clique. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just like this new like baby gay coming here as an introvert, as a gamer, not as this like, I don't know, perceived to be like cool person who goes out parties all the time or whatever. And like I just felt so ostracized, and I kept going to the meetings because I was like, these are the only queer people I know on campus. And I'm just like, you know, but like that sort of just made me, I think that might have cemented some of that part when I came out of college, that I'm like, I just don't belong in this community. Like this isn't like, I don't find the people that like I connect with. So I think that maybe formed a little bit of that whole opinion that when I was, you know, later in life. But yeah, now I
Sure.
obviously we've formed an amazing community, and I feel very welcome by everyone, and I've made a lot of amazing friends at BG. So I can't complain about things anymore. But yeah.
Sure. Fair enough. So that is actually like that gives me the perfect opportunity to pivot and talk about the Boston Gamers a little bit more, which is obviously something people are going to want to hear about your responses to.
Okay.
So starting off with just the basics, how long has the server been around?
So I think it's like officially 3 years, but like next month it will basically be 4, I believe. So we're getting a bit older, and like we'll probably have some kind of celebration to celebrate that. Yeah.
Growing out of that awkward toddler phase.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. And a lot has changed in those past years, let's just say. We've both
Sure.
like we've improved in a bunch of different ways. So yeah.
Can you tell the story first of how it came to be, and then I'll ask some stuff about the changes as well. Uh,
Yeah, so I think I'm trying to remember like the exact story, but it basically sort of what happened was I was probably sitting in my bedroom, and I was on the computer, and then Austin was there and he was on the computer. And I think Discord had just kind of became like a more popular thing. Like people are actually migrating from like, we used to have like a Skype like group chat with friends to play games, and believe me, like Skype group chat is terrible for doing that particular use case. So whenever whenever Discord came out, we were like, oh, let's jump ship like immediately. So basically that happened. We started to get to know Discord, how to run like a small Discord. And at some point I had this idea where I remembered back many years, probably like trying to remember exactly. I think I was maybe 21 when this happened, but there was a Facebook group on called Gay Gamers Boston, and they like had some events like however long ago that was. It was several years before like the founding of BG, and one of them was like this big party, and it really showed me like how many other people were kind of like in the area that like, you know, were like gonna fit that type of, you know, community, and everyone had a great time, and like I have memories from that. But then that sort of just died. Like I think the thing with running any of these kinds of things is like it's just like a big long haul, and you have to like have passion behind it, and you have to have people who are willing to help you like make it a reality and all that stuff. So that group sort of died. And then I was sitting there one day and I'm like, I remembered that it exists. And then I connected the dot and I'm like, Discord is a thing now. And I'm just like, oh, what if we made like a Discord with, you know, gamers from Boston in it? And then that's sort of just how it happened. And we went to that group and we like posted about it. And we are like, hey, we want to start a Discord to like play games together and like maybe have some in-person events, which haven't happened like in this space in like a long time. And yeah, that's sort of just what happened. And we had, you know, 30 people join, you know, rather quickly. And then we met up for dinner. And then here we are like 3 years later. So
Sure. Um, so I feel like as I've said before and as you've just referenced, the server has been many different things over time. It's been
Mhm.
like many different versions of itself, even in the time that I've been here, which is less time than its total existence. Can you tell me what it was like at the very beginning and outline from your perspective, kind of how it's changed over time?
Yeah, so I think to this day, like we're still going through a little bit of these growing pains and like trying to figure out like what it means to be like such a big, group that's important to so many, different people's lives. But basically, when it started, we were just seeing it through the lens of we just wanted to kind of make other, queer friends that played games in the area. So it was sort of that. It was very, very small vibe. Like we were, and since we started out of Gay Gamers Boston, which was largely like probably, I don't even know, 95 or more percent male, like gay male. So basically, since that was our initial draw, we were very, very largely just like gay males. Like, and that was sort of the culture that was there. And like I guess when that stuff happens, you kind of take some of those things for granted. Like you're thinking like everything is through that lens. So a lot of like the terminology we had and rules and all kinds of different things were always like through that lens. And like we kind of maybe allowed more things in the server that we probably should have because we were thinking of it as like a group of friends, and like we're all kind of would be shady to each other and would have these inside jokes and things because we're just a small group. And then like eventually, like I think that was our first year we went to PAX, which was like I think I don't remember if that was 2018 or whatever, but we basically had our first meetup. I think that was the 2017 PAX. And we walked into the room and we're like, one day we want to have a BG booth in here. And then the next year we did, and we've just like grown exponentially since then. Like it isn't that small group of like pretty much exclusively gay men who are like shading each other and having all these inside jokes. Like we have to realize that it's like something different now, and like the way that we interact and the types of events that we have to make sure that we're looking at it through a lens of this being like a bigger thing than us at this point. Like it's grown its own legs and it's become something that we never thought it could be, basically. So like that's sort of been the greatest achievement we've done, but also sort of the hardest thing is to like sit up at the top of like the Discord list and like realize that like it's changed. Like something's fundamentally has changed and it's more important that we do things different ways. So I guess we're just trying to be as inclusive and as welcoming and as understanding of everyone that joins and try to make it the greatest place that it can be, basically, at this point. But yeah.
Sure. Um, Zach did mention in the chat that it has become his personal vessel for shit posting, and then called me out for almost having laughed at that on stream. So I'm confessing to that. But that's great. What do you see? And so you've partially answered that actually you've partially answered my next question in
Okay.
there. But to dig into it a little bit more, what do you see for the future of BG? What specific things do you want to do going forward? What's going to change now?
Well, I think what's sort of been interesting about BG in this past year is sort of like I guess we've grown in a different way than like we had before. Like we're doing so many things now. Like before we used to rely on like one or two big events per month and we just meet in person. And obviously like that brings its benefits. People like meeting up in person, obviously. Like it's feels nice and social. But now like in this world we've had to live in this year, we like pivoted so much towards just being a place that people come together and get like any kind of socialization, that it's sort of interesting to think about the future and how we can transition to like the quote unquote new normal and still bring some of this along. So to me, like still focusing on being like as inclusive as possible, listening to feedback, like accepting that we're changing as an organization, but also just like merging the two offerings that we were doing. So I think we still definitely want to at some point return to having awesome in-person events, but at the same time I think like digital events are like awesome and should still be part of what BG is going forward, I think, because they still bring a lot to the table as well. So that's going to be an interesting thing, figuring out how we do both of those things and how we just put our effort between everything. But yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and the PoE shirt.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that chat.
All right, that's good. So before we go here, I want to talk a little bit about entertainment and media you enjoy. That's always kind of a fun note to end on, I think. So I don't actually know. Do you watch much TV?
So I would say I watch TV in the sense that I watch it online after it's aired. Like I definitely don't watch live TV, but the only thing that I'll watch live is like we watch Drag Race together in the Discord, and maybe like one or two other things. But mainly I'll watch like shows that kind of have been important to me over my life. Like I was really into sci-fi shows growing up, so like you got your Star Treks, and like the biggest one was probably Stargate for me for whatever reason, because it mixed like this I don't know, like religious aspect of things, and then making it into some kind of science fiction, which I think just resonated with me some way, because like I was growing to not be so religious when I was older, but I was also still like I knew a lot about it, so that was sort of interesting. And then I was really into like Warehouse 13 when it was airing. That was like one of my favorite shows ever. So I'm like really into like sci-fi shows, I would say.
Gotcha. Cool. So I do know that you're a bit more invested in cinema in general than I am. I got the chance to ask Oni this question as well, so I think it bookends nicely to ask both of you because you're kind of the resident experts. Can you tell me what you see as some essential LGBTQ plus cinema? Are there any titles that are like must watches in that category?
Oh, that's such a hard question. I feel like LGBT cinema is so interesting because there isn't a lot of it, and you almost have to give it some sense of like the fact that it is LGBT cinema when you're judging it, like which makes it harder to decide like what are like your must-haves. But I think like in terms of like when I was younger, I sought out a lot of media to try to explain to myself that like how I was queer and like, you know, make that make sense. So I like really saw a lot of it out. I've seen a lot of bad gay movies. I'll just say that. Lots and lots and lots. And so some I would point out that are probably like worth watching. You have like Shelter, which is good, like Latter Days is good. And then like you could go into like your other classics like Kinky Boots or something like that. But like in terms of like I guess through the lens of like gay movies, like those were probably the ones that stand out to me. I will confer to Oni about a lot of the other movies because we're like working together, and I was like throwing out all these movies that I liked, but then we watched like Eat With Me, and everyone just hate like I don't know if they hated it, but there was so much criticism because it's not a good movie, but it's a gay movie. And like you had to kind of like put on, you know, like beer goggles when you're watching a gay movie to accept that it's not as good. But yeah. So
well, hey, criticism isn't always bad.
Yeah.
That is, I think that's part of the movie watching experience. The City Junk did ask if you're building a nightclub on this raft, and then Zach mentioned that it looks like the Royale.
I'm building the new BG cruise ship up here. I'll send screenshots when I actually put the logo and stuff.
Perfect. We were promised now. So aside from queer cinema, what are some of your favorite movies in general? Do you have a must-watch list of just movies?
To me, probably like if you were to ask what my favorite like series or movies were, probably like Lord of the Rings is really high up on the list for me. Like it was funny because like I didn't actually see them when they were like actually in theaters. And like randomly, like I think my aunt had a copy of like the Fellowship of the Ring. And like we watched it as like a family, and we just became like immediately obsessed with it. So we had to go out and buy the other two movies, and we watched them all in like a weekend. So like for some reason that definitely stands out to me. And then I would have to say like just the way that the Marvel movies were so like built up over time the whole 20 movie experience, and then like had such culmination is still like an amazing cinematic moment for me when I saw like Endgame in theaters. So I have to say like those are pretty high up on the list for me as well, the Marvel movies.
Sure. Cool. Both pretty epic stories. So
Yeah, I'm definitely
that
into
must
my
be
epics. Yeah.
yeah, cool. Um, so we are a gaming server, which someone might
Mhm.
know. So naturally, I have to find out what you've been playing recently. So what, other than Raft, because we're seeing it,
Okay.
has been on the
Yeah.
docket recently?
Um. So I guess I'm known in the server at this point as someone who plays a lot of PoE. I got the
It's on the
shirt on
shirt.
after all. Yeah. But basically, I like every time a new league comes out for that, I tend to go back and play that for a while, and then, um, so I definitely still play that probably the most out of any game that I play. Um, and then there's this, and then I was replaying a little bit of Dragon Age actually because I was like remembering how amazing the story was after like we were talking about all our favorite Flemeth quotes and stuff like that. I was like, I'm gonna do a replay of Origins, but then I just realized how clunky Origins feels, and I'm just kind of like, I love the story, but God, this gameplay needs a lot of work. So yeah.
I'm honestly surprised they haven't ever remastered it since it came out because it's so well loved. It seems like a
Yeah.
game that would make a bunch of money if they went back and just redid the combat to be modern or whatever.
Yeah, that's sort of the funny thing now. It's like it's almost like the new sort of like hotness to like remake games that we loved from our like childhood. I don't know what that tells about us from like a societal aspect that we're just rehashing all these like movies and TV shows and games into like new copies. But yeah, I would love that for sure if they did a remaster of Dragon.
Fair enough. What are some of your all-time favorite video games? So beyond just what you're playing now, what are the best of all time?
I have to say like World of Warcraft for me was like a major staple of my gaming for like a long, long time. So if I were to say like preempt you asking this question, who's my favorite, video game character of all time, it'd probably be someone from like World of Warcraft, like Jaina Proudmoore or something. Like I just love the way Blizzard has like weaved some of their lore and like created some of their characters, and just like the cinematics and everything is just so amazing, like bringing their characters to life. So I'd have to say something like that. Um, but I'd also probably say like Dragon Age is up there too. Like it's very close to like World of Warcraft. I think World of Warcraft just hits a little bit different because it's like it was such a big part of my life for so long. Like I was obsessed with it. So
Sure.
yeah.
Fair enough. Well, with that, I think that brings us to the end of our time today. That's all I had on the docket. So before we head off here, I of course always have to say all my thank yous. So first and foremost, thank you so much, Matt, for sitting here and chatting with me this evening. It's been a real pleasure. I wanna also throw out a thank you to Zach, who sets up the tech for this and does all the restreaming stuff. It makes it like a million times easier than it would be otherwise. Thank you to Oni, who carefully edits every single BG Bio script. Has done that 11 or 12 times now. I guess wrote one of them, edited the others. And there's no better editor for entertainment or for grammar than Oni is. So I feel like it's a privilege every time I get the chance to have them edit something for me. Just a thank you to all the mods and planners that let me run this Goofy Talk show. Much appreciated. And then lastly, and most importantly, thank you to all our viewers for coming out here and chatting with us and keeping things active and interesting, and making me realize how much like a nightclub the top of this raft looks like. It's been a real pleasure as always. And with that, I think that's about all I have. Do you have any last words, Matt?
I just want to say thank you to everyone that's helped BG grow from what I was talking about earlier into the amazing thing that is now. And I hope that everyone is enjoying their time. And is willing to give us feedback when we need it, and we can grow and become an even better BG for the future.
Sure. Sounds great. And with that, good night, everyone.
Bye.